What if the dollar you think you're using isn't real anymore? What if the cash in your pocket, the balance in your bank, the number you see on your screen isn't actually money, but a placeholder? Because over the last few years, the US quietly executed a $7 trillion transition that replaced traditional dollars with something far more powerful and far more dangerous. They call it liquidity, or balance sheet expansion, or economic support. But the real name for it is digital monetary replacement. You weren't told about it, you didn't get to vote on it, but you're already using this new system. Every crisis was the excuse. The 2020 lockdowns, the 2021 inflation spike, the 2023 bank failures. One crisis after another. And each one moved us closer to a cashless, trackable, and programmable financial system. Just look around you. Banks are relentlessly pushing mobile payments. Cash acceptance is dropping everywhere. Digital wallets are exploding in popularity. And behind the scenes, the Federal Reserve is quietly building a nationwide digital control grid disguised as innovation. Before we go any deeper into this, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your country in the comments, because this isn't just happening in the US, this is a global movement. Make sure you subscribe for the unfiltered truth, because after today you will never look at your money the same way again. Let's rewind the clock. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. Then, in 1971, the US dollar was officially detached from the gold standard. But in 2020, the dollar was detached from reality itself. Before 2008, money basically meant two things: physical cash in your hand and bank deposits created through lending. It was simple. Then came the first big switch, quantitative easing, or QE. QE created dollars without loans. It was pure digital liquidity, typed into existence with no real-world constraint. But back then, we were told that QE was just a temporary measure. Does that sound familiar? It should, because almost nothing the government does is ever truly temporary. And then 2020 changed everything. The Fed didn't just add liquidity to the system, it completely rewrote the meaning of money. The government injected an astonishing $7 trillion in just 2 years. This money wasn't printed, it wasn't borrowed from taxpayers, it was just created digitally out of thin air. Your bank didn't get stacks of new cash. They got Fed reserves, which are basically digital IOUs backed by nothing but policy decisions. And those IOUs effectively replaced real dollars as the backbone of our financial system. You see the parallels, right? Look at history. In 1933, holding gold was banned, and it was replaced with paper money. In 1971, that paper money was detached from gold and replaced with pure fiat currency. And in 2020, that fiat currency was detached from reality and replaced with digital reserves. Every era follows the same pattern. When a system is about to collapse, they replace the money, but they never replace the rulers. And each new version of money becomes easier to control. We went from paper to electronic to programmable. This is the real story behind the cashless society, the digital dollar, FedNow, central bank digital currencies, all these payment apps, and the declining use of cash. None of this happened naturally. It was engineered. And while you were distracted by headlines about inflation, they were busy installing the system that will control your entire financial future. Now here's where everything flips. Everyone thinks the official digital dollar is something that's coming in the future. But here's the newsflash. It's already here. FedNow launched in 2023. This is not just another payment app. It's not a bank product. It is a federal settlement network that can bypass commercial banks entirely. Before, banks settled large transactions with each other. Now the Federal Reserve can settle every payment in real time. What does that mean? It means they can see everything, they can approve everything, and they can freeze anything. This wasn't about innovation. It was about placement. It was about building the infrastructure, the rails for a central bank digital currency. And do you know what was plugged into those rails? The very same $7 trillion that was created during the pandemic. Not dollars, not cash, not bank deposits, but digital central bank liabilities. That was the switch. The currency itself was changed. But the dollars in your bank account kept the same name, so you wouldn't notice. Now banks don't truly control money anymore. The Fed does, directly. And the entity that controls the money controls the behavior, because when a currency becomes programmable, so does the citizen. We're about to dive into the receipts, and the proof is even wilder than you think. Before 2008, when you thought of money, you were mostly thinking about deposits created by commercial banks. They'd lend money into existence. The Federal Reserve, or the Fed, was like the referee, overseeing the game from the sidelines, managing the reserves that banks held. But since 2020, something fundamental has shifted. The money that matters most now isn't created by your local bank. It's reserves created directly by the Fed. For a while, these reserves were just an inside game. Numbers passed back and forth between banks and the central bank. But now, with new systems like FedNow, these Fed-created reserves are breaking out of the banking system and flowing directly into the entire economy. This is a huge deal. It means the Fed is no longer just the referee. They've stepped onto the field and become the most powerful player in the game. So how did they pull off such a massive change without anyone really noticing? It started with a Trojan horse, a beautifully disguised one that cost $7 trillion. Between 2020 and 2022, an incredible 40% of all US dollars that have ever existed were created out of thin air. Think about that. Nearly half of all dollars were printed in just 2 years. We saw it play out in different ways. Banks got flooded with digital reserves. We, the people, received stimulus checks. Businesses got emergency loans to stay afloat. On the surface, it felt like a rescue mission. The government was helping us through a crisis. But every single one of those transactions, from the massive bank bailouts to your $1,200 check, was settled through the Federal Reserve's systems. The public called it stimulus. But what it really was a mass migration. We were all being herded, transaction by transaction, into a new financial arena where the Fed doesn't just watch the flow of money, it sits right at the center, controlling all the pipes. This brings us to the next, and perhaps most concerning part of this story, the slow death of cash. Why does cash matter so much? Because cash is freedom. Cash is anonymous. When you buy a coffee with a $5 bill, nobody knows but you and the barista. It's untraceable. Cash gives you the liberty to transact without leaving a digital footprint. But the new world of money, the world of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, is the exact opposite. CBDCs are not anonymous. In fact, their primary feature is that they can track everything. Every purchase, every donation, every single place you spend your money is recorded on a central ledger. They say this is for security and to fight crime, but the implications go so much further. With a fully digital programmable currency, your money isn't really yours anymore. It can be frozen with the click of a button if you do something the authorities don't like. Your spending could be limited. Your money could even be given an expiration date, forcing you to spend it before it vanishes from your account. Imagine trying to buy a plane ticket, but the system blocks you because you've exceeded your carbon allowance for the month. Or trying to buy a book that's been flagged as undesirable. Or finding your digital wallet is locked to a specific city, preventing you from traveling. This isn't a wild conspiracy theory from a sci-fi movie. These capabilities are openly discussed in the white papers and official documents published by central banks around the world. They call them policy tools. I call them digital chains. When your money becomes programmable, it's not just the money that's being programmed. You are. If an authority can control whether your money works, they can control your behavior. They can deny a transaction if you've criticized them online. They can delay your paycheck if you haven't complied with a new mandate. They can automatically tax every single transaction you make, or even make your money expire to stimulate the economy. Your financial freedom, which is the foundation of all your other freedoms, would no longer be a right. It would be a privilege, granted to you at the discretion of an algorithm written by unseen programmers. This is a new kind of social control system, a system of digital feudalism where we are all serfs. And our digital wallets are the plots of land we are allowed to work, but never truly own. Let's look at the receipts, because the evidence is everywhere if you know where to look. At its peak, the Fed's balance sheet swelled to $9 trillion. Remember the $7 trillion created between 2020 and 2022? That's not just a number. It's the fuel for this whole transition. While that was happening, the use of physical cash has plummeted. In some countries, It's down over 50% in just 5 years. And this isn't just an American phenomenon, it's global. Over 90% of the world's central banks are actively researching or developing their own CBDCs. China is already way ahead with its digital yuan, which has been tested with expiration dates. The European Central Bank is designing a digital euro that could forbid private anonymous wallets. And here in the US, FedNow is already operational, a system that processes government-controlled payments 24/7. The pattern is global, the motive is identical: control. And if we don't wake up, the result is inevitable. So what's the end game? A world without physical money. And when cash disappears, two other critical things disappear along with it: your freedom and your anonymity. Because once every dollar is digital and tracked, every person is tracked. And once every person is tracked, every action can be controlled. A digital dollar isn't just a more convenient form of money, it's a leash. It's a tool of surveillance and compliance built into the very fabric of our economy. Think back. Were you asked for your opinion when they flipped the switch and created $7 trillion? Were you notified that the very nature of money was being changed? Were you consulted when they laid the tracks for this new system? Of course not. Because they knew if they asked for permission, we would have said no. This shift from cash to digital to programmable money didn't happen overnight. It happened quietly during a crisis when we were all distracted and scared. It happened legally through policy changes and technological rollouts that few understood, and it's intended to be permanent. The Fed now controls the rails of the financial system. The government controls the issuance of the currency, and the major financial institutions and media control the narrative, telling you this is all about progress, convenience, and security. And you're handed the illusion of choice. You can use this app or that app, this bank or that bank. But underneath it all, the foundation is the same. It's a centralized system where you are the end user, not the owner. The next financial crisis won't need a panicked run on the banks. All it will need is a software update. Your access to your own money, your freedom, could be updated in real time without your consent. The truth is terrifyingly simple. If they control the money, they control the behavior. If they control the behavior, they control the entire population. So, before you click away to the next video, I want you to ask yourself a serious question. Are we just on the verge of programmable money, or are we already living in the early stages of it? Has the foundation already been built while we weren't looking? If this video opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with people you care about. The more people who understand what's happening, the better chance we have of preserving our freedom. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more truths they don't want you to know.